before we get into this real quick, I'm just using a simple rating system. S tier is the best, and then you've got A, B, C, and D. So jumping right in, my first one is Kodak Gold. Now this is a very popular film stock. A lot of photographers use this and love it, including myself. This is one of my main film stocks and I use this all the time. It's a very versatile film stock. The ISO speed of 200 makes it very versatile. You can use it for a lot of different things. It's a little bit cheaper than something like Portra or any of the more expensive films like that, but it still is delivering very good comparable results. And so for me, it's just a versatile, good, all-around film stock. Not perfect, but great. Kodak Gold gets an A tier. So my next one is Ektar 100. Now I really love this film stock because it is exceptional for landscapes. If you're doing outdoor work, this is the film stock to use. This is perfect for that. ISO 100 is going to make it really easy to get those fine-grained, clean images, and you're also going to have an easier time slowing down your shutter speed, and you can still stop down your aperture a fair ways if you want to. You're on a tripod at this point most likely anyway, so this is an excellent film stock for that. The color rendition and detail rendition are excellent on this film stock and I really love it. And the reason that I wouldn't quite put this as S tier is that 100 ISO keeps it from quite being perfect. It's going to be really difficult to use this indoors or in any kind of low light situation without really slowing down your shutter speed. And also when you're photographing people, if you overexpose the skin tones, they can turn out just a little bit red, which is a little bit annoying. So I would say for me, this film stock gets an A. So moving right along, this is Portra 800. And for me, this gets an S tier. One of the only ones on the list that I'm giving an S tier to, and that's because it is near perfect. The detail, the color rendition, the fine grain for the fact that it's ISO 800, I really love this film stock for just about everything. And really the only cons I have against it is the price. It's very expensive. And also the speed of 800 can start to feel a little bit too fast sometimes if you're outdoors in bright daylight. And so it can be a little bit annoying to have to be at f11 or 16 when you'd prefer to be at f4 or 5, 6. And so this gets an S tier for me because if you're looking for a fast, high quality color 35mm film negative, this is one of the best options out there, if not the only. Its only real competitor would be something like Cinestill 800T, which I haven't been shooting lately, but I used to shoot a lot of this, and this is an excellent film stock, again, for high-speed color film work. It's kind of the only other option, really, outside of Portra. There's a lot of halation on this, and the color rendition and all of that can kind of be a little bit stylized, and so depending on what you really like the look of, this may not be quite for you. It's really something if you look at any images online taken with this film stock, you'll see immediately what I'm talking about. It's a stylized look, so you got to decide whether or not that's something you want. It's great for nighttime streets especially, and that's something that I really like it for, or just nighttime photos or darker photos in general, because it can look really good if that's the look you want to go for. But for me, this film stock gets a B. Alright, so the next one is Ultramax 400. So I shot my first roll of this not that long ago, and from what I've seen online of people's photos taken with this, I generally haven't really liked the look of it. After shooting a roll of this myself, I was actually fairly pleased with the results. It was fine. I would prefer to shoot something like Ektar or Kodak Gold or Portra over this, but otherwise this film stock is fine, but it's not great. I find it to be a little bit grainy for what it is. Something like Portra 800 I find actually has a similar amount of grain, even though that's double the box speed. And so the quality is fine, and you can definitely you can take some great photos with this. And so for me, Ultramax 400 gets a D. Alright, so this is one of my longtime favorites. This is Kodak Color Plus 200. I used to shoot this a lot when I first got into film photography. This is one of my favorites. It was really affordable at the time, and now the prices of this and Kodak Gold are pretty similar from B&H right now, and so I find that Kodak Gold just has a slightly nicer color rendition, and I like the slightly warmer look that you get out of it. But otherwise, this is a really solid film stock still, and it's pretty similar to Kodak Gold. And so for me, this film stock gets a B because it's good, but I think Kodak Gold is a little bit better, and usually from what I've seen, the pricing is pretty similar. Okay, so this one is probably the most expensive film on the list, but this is Ektachrome 100. This is a color reversal film. This is a positive rather than a negative. And so the reason that I have shot this, and I've only ever shot 2 rolls of it, is because I have a slide projector to actually put slides through. And so if it weren't for that, I wouldn't really recommend this film as much. The colors can be pretty nice and they're saturated and really good. It's a fine grain at ISO 100. And so the photos look great, but I think that you would probably be better off with something like Ektar 100 if those are the things you're going for, as this is just so expensive compared to that. And on top of that, it costs me, I believe, $10 or $15 more to actually develop the film into slides. And so that is another cost on top of all of that, and so that's why I've only ever shot 2 rolls of this. And so it gets an A from me, but it's very expensive, so it's not something I would recommend a lot of people shoot unless it's really worth it to get those slides to actually put through a projector. Okay, so I did a dedicated video on this film stock, so if you want to watch that, I will link it above somewhere or below somewhere in the description. But this is Agent Shadow 400. And one of the reasons I really like this film stock is the box art and the name. I think it's really cool, it's really creative, it's not something I've seen much elsewhere. But other than that, it's a pretty standard ISO 400 black and white film. There's nothing super unique about the actual results you're getting out of it. So I would maybe find a slightly cheaper black and white film if you just want an ISO 400 black and white film. And so for me, this film stock is a B, because it doesn't really stand apart from other black and white 400 film stocks too much in my opinion. Other than that name and box art, which isn't a huge deal for most people, I don't think. I just think it's pretty cool, and so I wanted to try it at least once, and I did make a full video out, so go check that out if you wanted to learn about it more. So this next film is another Cinesto film, and this is Cinesto 400D. It kind of follows suit with Cinesto 800T in that it's just very stylized. You get a lot of that halation, except this is daylight balanced and it's a little bit slower. And so ISO 400 is a very versatile ISO. You get a slower speed for when you need it, but it's still fast enough. And so for me, this film stock gets an A. So next up we have Kentmere Pan 100. Now this film stock I have shot a few times. I actually shot a few rolls of it while I was in Colorado as well, and I really liked the results. The grain is fairly fine, the detail rendition is nice, the contrast is good. Really not much to complain about. It's a ISO 100 black and white film, the results are great, and the price is incredible. And so for me, this gets an A. So next up I have another Kentmere Pan film, but this is Kentmere Pan 400. And from what I've seen, it is basically just Pan 100, but it's an ISO 400 speed. So the results are very similar, but you get a little bit more speed. Black and white film is very good at being pushed and pulled, so if you wanted to push this to 800 or pull it to 200, you could very easily do that. And so this is a really flexible film stock in that regard. And so for me, this film stock gets a B because it's basically the same as Pan 100, but just a little bit faster. All right, so the last 3 film stocks I'm gonna go over are all black and white film stocks. And the first one here is Ilford XP2, and I've shot 2 rolls of this. And as of the time of this recording, it is a fair bit more expensive than something like Pan 400, so I really wouldn't recommend it because the results aren't, as far as I can tell, that different from something like Pan 400. And so I really wouldn't recommend this because of the price increase over it. But otherwise, it's a solid black and white ISO 400 film stock, so if that's what you want, this is great for that. But I think I would recommend saving money and going for the Pan 400 instead. And so for me, XP2 gets a C. Almost specifically because it is just so much more expensive than something like Pan 400, which I believe is pretty similar. Next up we have HP5 Plus, and this is pretty similar again. This is just another ISO 400 black and white film stock. Same thing as XP2, the results are really good, but if it's a little bit more expensive than something like Pan 400, I wouldn't really recommend it because Pan 400 is going to give you those similar results and it's going to be a little bit cheaper. But again, it depends on the pricing, which could change after this video. So for me, this film stock gets a B because it's pretty similar to Pan 400. Alright, so my last film stock on this list is Ilford Delta 3200. And this film stock is really interesting because it's one of the only really fast film stocks out there. If you're in a really low light situation or you need to freeze fast moving subjects indoors and it's really dark, there aren't many options out there. There used to be, a while back, there used to be ISO 1600 color films, but we don't really have those anymore. No one manufactures them. And so for that, you would have to go to something like Portra 800. Maybe you could push it a stop. Really, the best results are going to come from something like this. And with an ISO of 3200, you're getting a lot of light. So for me, this film stock gets an S tier because it is exceptional for low light and really the only option out there, and it does a great job. Alright, so that's it for my film tier list. Let me know which ones you would rank differently down in the comments below. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Otherwise, that's all I have for you today. So have a great day and happy shooting.